Good evening, guys. It is 9:30 on Tuesday, the 2nd of January 2024, and I'm the Cheapskate Streamer. Looking slightly even more cheapskate than normal at the minute. If I can't get that angle sorted. Let me see how. No, that is worse. Perhaps that's about as good as I'm going to get there. Right, anyway, yes, I'm sure everybody knows by now, t.me/cheapskate streamer, that is the address for the channel on Telegram. And I'm sure you also know by now that we also have a link tree, which is at link.tr.ee/cheapskate streamer. And on the link tree, as you can see, there are links to Telegram, Rumble, X, Kick, DLive, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, and an option to buy me a coffee. So I start all the broadcasts on Telegram, and then depending on the content and so on that I'm going to broadcast, I'll choose from some of these others. So this evening, as well as being live on Telegram, we're also live on DLive. It's going to be I think it's going to be a fairly busy broadcast. I decided I would probably start off with a couple of little funnies, if you like, just to kind of lighten the mood perhaps. But before we do that, let's drop the link and drop me. There we go. And here is the first one. So perhaps a little difficult to make out. Well, basically, the top chimp says, "What does someone with diarrhea have in common with the owner of an electric car?" And the answer at the bottom is, "They both hope they'll make it home." I thought that was quite a good one. The other one I've got, it's not all that funny, I suppose, but you know, estimated size of a tin of Quality Street in 2050. A little bigger than a ring that you might put in your finger, perhaps. Believe it or not, I actually have I think it's a tin of Quality Street, just not far away. Give me 2 seconds, I'll grab it. Yeah, I am correct. It is indeed Quality Street. However, when they talk about a tin, what I've got in my hand, I'll show you in a second, isn't so much a tin. It's more like I don't know what you would call a plastic box. Sort of a, what is it, an octagonal shape? I'm not too sure. There's more than 6 sides on it anyway. So yeah, it's still a reasonable size. Anyway, unopened, as you can probably hear. To be honest, probably not my favourite box of chocolates, but not to worry. Right. One other thing that I wanted to draw attention to, guys, is the UK column news, or UK column just in general. They still appear to have a presence on Facebook, which is rather remarkable, but nonetheless, the UK column news is broadcast every, if things haven't changed, it's broadcast every Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 1 p.m. As far as I'm aware, they probably broadcast on Facebook, as well as via their own website, which is ukcolumn.org. And if you want to hit the live stream, it's ukcolumn.org/live. As I say, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 1 p.m. So that's, as I say, that's their Facebook page. But if we go to the actual website, you may be able to see. I'm not actually sure when the last news broadcast would have been. With the holidays and everything that there has been at present, so the one on the homepage here is from the 22nd of December. I'm not sure. I just wonder, is that the most recent one? I suspect that it might well be, simply because I don't see any other newer links there. But you can, if you go into the video part of the site, there's the top one is UK Column News Archive, and that's where you should see all the different episodes. Now, interestingly, I'm just actually noticing, and literally I'm noticing this in real time, UK Column News on the 18th of December looks as if it featured something to do with Lady Michelle Mone. She is actually somebody I was going to, I am going to mention this evening. However, I'm just a little bit curious as to why she's featured on the broadcast on UK Column News on the 18th. I tell you what, guys, bear with me. I will actually just play a few seconds of this just to see if there's any mention of Lady Mone in the headlines, or indeed the first article or two. I'm not going to dwell on it though, because there is more newer information out in the past couple of days, I think. And actually, it may be that's what that is going to tell us, simply that her husband Doug Barrowman was going to put out a statement, which he has indeed now done. But yeah, let's just have a quick watch at this and see what is mentioned at the top of the broadcast.
Good afternoon. Today is Monday, the 18th of December, 2023, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. Your host today, myself, Brian Gerrish, and delighted to be here with Mike Robinson, of course. And we're also joined by Mark Anderson from Texas, USA.
We will start with the PPE scandal. This is protection equipment, medical protection equipment. And on screen we have the PPE MedPro website. This belongs to PPE MedPro, as you might expect. And of course, they received £200 million or so in government contracts during the COVID pandemic. Now, why is this a scandal? It's because Doug Barrowman owns, or at least is a director of the company, and his wife, the Tory peer Michelle Mone, they are accused of some kind of corruption, perhaps, in getting that contract in the first place. Now, Michelle Mone was interviewed on the BBC yesterday by Laura Kuenssberg. Let's just have a brief listen to one of the things she said.
But Michelle, it does feel like the truth has had to be dragged out here.
Not really, Laura, because the only thing I'd say to you is the only error that I have made is say to the press that I wasn't involved.
But you repeatedly didn't tell the truth, whether it's the money, whether it's your involvement, whether you had to tell Parliament. It's a smokescreen.
But that's why we're here today, doing an interview
Did you
after
see
2
why
years.
people listening might feel that?
But that's why we're explaining to people.
What do you hope that 2024 will bring for you, legally, for your reputations, and for you personally?
I don't honestly see there's a case to answer. I can't see what we've done wrong. Doug and the consortium have simply delivered a contract, a delivery contract of goods.
But after everything, you can't see what you've done wrong when you've admitted today that you lied to the press and
That's
by
not a
extension
crime.
you lied to the public.
Laura, saying to the press I'm not involved to protect my family, can I just make this clear? It's not a crime. The press have got nothing to do with my family. I was protecting my family.
So the question is, what's going on here? Now, they are subject to a National Crime Agency investigation at the moment. That's ongoing. And of course, she has absolutely denied that she had anything to do with the procurement of this contract. So in 2021, the UK government published this document, PPE procurement in the early pandemic, and this came in response to a Freedom of Information request by the Good Law Project, and they made public of all the companies that were awarded contracts via what was called the VIP lane. Well, if we just have a look at the documentation here, we'll just look at the P's. Routes used to identify suppliers in the high priority lane. This included PPE MedPro Limited, and it says there absolutely that the source of the referral to the government for the potential contract was Baroness Mona herself via the office of Lord Agnew. So the question is she right to suggest that really she did nothing wrong, and the fact that she didn't tell the truth to the press actually isn't breaking the law? Well, indeed, it probably isn't. Now, we should make the point that the Telegraph a couple of days ago published this, where they said, because one of the allegations against the PPE MedPro is that the garments that they were, the protective garments that they were providing were not fit for purpose, and that PPE MedPro is now being sued by the British government. But this article in the Telegraph says that the Cabinet Office approved the hospital gowns made by the firm and that they'd been, from a technical perspective, approved. This is what they were tweeting out, or what she was tweeting out today, last week. My husband and I have been used as a scapegoat by the government for their own failings on PPE procurement. And I think this is a very good question. Are they being used as a scapegoat? Because if we actually go back to 2022, we see this from the UK Parliament Public Accounts Committee. £4 billion of unusable PPE bought in the first year of the pandemic will be burnt to generate power. And if we look at some of the text on this, they say the Department for Health and Social Care lost 75% of the £12 billion it spent on PPE in the first year of the pandemic. So we're talking about a £120 million or a £200 million contract in the case of PPE MedPro, which seems like pretty small beans compared to the loss of 75% of £12 billion. It goes on to say, including £4 billion of PPE that will be not be used in the NHS and needs to be disposed of. One of the points that she makes is that the DHSC bought PPE on contracts for 5 years, knowing full well that, in fact, its shelf life was 2 years, so there's no possibility of them using all that PPE in the time. And this goes on to say, in a report today, the Public Accounts Committee says that as a result of the DHSC's haphazard purchasing strategy, 24% of the PPE contracts awarded are now in dispute, including contracts for products that were not fit for purpose, and one contract for 3.5 billion gloves, where there was an allegation of modern slavery against the manufacturer. So clearly this is an extremely dirty business from start to finish. And I just wonder whether the PPE MedPro scandal is being used as a cover or diversion?
Well, that that would certainly make sense to me. Of course, the whole pond around COVID and the pandemic was dirty, where nobody really knew what was going on as these things were brought in almost overnight with no proper parliamentary debate. Now, what they need, of course, is a scapegoat in order to try and take the heat off the whole of the government Westminster system, which did the damage. So I think you've got one more.
No, it's okay.
Oh, you've moved through that one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right, well, let's come on to another subject where it seems to me, at least, that the government wants to lie and lie again, and that is migration. Now, this is a headline from the BBC, which
Okay, so actually that was quite revealing there from UK Column News. They've done a lot of the work for me in some respects, but I'm pleased to see that we've come to the same conclusion overall. And I suppose what I would point out is that whenever you look at Michelle Mone, what do you see? And, you know, quite frankly, she is, at least compared to the vast majority of peers in the House of Lords, she is a good-looking, relatively young woman. And it seems to me as though basically what we're looking at is a Sunak-sponsored scapegoat attack, to put it very bluntly. But yeah, what I actually wanted to draw attention to today is this little post. Now, I wonder if I can see when that was posted. Okay, so this is actually from yesterday, so this is right up to date. Let me get rid of my face, so as you can see the whole thing. That should be better now. Okay, so as you can see here, posted on Twitter by Michelle Mone is the @ thing for Twitter. And she goes under the title Lady Michelle Mone, with the blue tick thing. I forget what that's supposed to be called, but anyway. So we've got a quote here. This is Doug, her husband. Presumably the government paid for MedPro's masks and gowns. So this is talking about PPE MedPro. He says the government paid for MedPro's masks and gowns only once they were satisfied with the product. So that backs up what has just been stated in the UK Column News episode from the 18th of December. Doug says, we funded all our own working capital and took the ultimate risk on behalf of the government. Then, over 2.5 years later, DHSC, the Department of Health and Social Care, raised a civil claim against MedPro concerning the technical specifications of the gowns, even though 24 other suppliers of gowns with the same technical specification as those supplied by MedPro are not being pursued. And quite frankly, you know, whenever you read that, 24 other suppliers of gowns with the same technical specification as those supplied by MedPro are not being pursued. The obvious question here being, why the fuck not? So as he says at the end here, this dispute is presently before the civil courts and we are confident of success. There's then a second tweet or post, or whatever you call these things, a statement from my husband Doug Barrowman on PPE MedPro and the truth about what has happened to us. There's a community notes thing which I actually had a bit of a glance at, and I want to, certainly unless they've changed it, I want to take issue with what's in the community notes thing. But in the meantime, let's read. I think we need to hear from the people accused themselves, as opposed to listening to basically what has been put out about them, as I say, in what I regard as a Sunak-sponsored attack. So this is Doug Barrowman's statement, 1st of January this year, so yesterday. He says, "My family and I have been treated as a punch bag by the media for the past 3 years. We have received death threats and a constant torrent of online and other abuse. This cannot continue, and the British public need to know the facts. MedPro supplied PPE to the UK government at competitive prices and following a transparent process. Wait to hear this. Our pricing was so competitive that we saved the UK government at least £100 million compared to the competition at the time. 210 million Type 2R masks were delivered and used in full, and 25 million gowns were made to specification and delivered on time. These goods were provided when the UK government desperately needed to find PPE in high volumes and at short notice. MedPro's work was no different to any of the 51 other suppliers through what became known as the high priority lane. The value of the 115 contracts through the high priority lane was £3.8 billion, comprised of government ministers, MPs, peers, senior civil servants and Department of Health and Social Care officials. In total, 394 contracts to a value of £7.9 billion were given to new PPE suppliers. The government paid for MedPro's masks and gowns only once they were satisfied with the product. MedPro received no upfront deposits from the government, unlike 298 other suppliers to the tune of £2.5 billion. We funded all our own working capital and took the ultimate risk on behalf of the UK government. Over 2.5 years later, DHSC raised a civil claim against MedPro, and I assume the reason that that's highlighted is that basically a civil claim is not and has not got a civil thing is basically, it's a business dispute, if you like. It's not anything criminal. So let's continue. So DHSC raised a civil claim against MedPro concerning the technical specifications of the gowns, even though 24 other suppliers of gowns with the same technical specification as those supplied by MedPro are not being pursued. This dispute is presently before the civil courts, and we are confident of success. At the end of the day, this is a commercial dispute. There's just what I said. No different from many claims of similar scale which are determined in the High Court. It is curious to note that out of 176 disputed contracts to a value of £2.7 billion, no one else other than MedPro is being litigated against. For a kick-off, there was at least £400 million in outright fraud, where suppliers ran off with the deposits paid up front. Quite frankly, I would regard that as a criminal matter, but that's just me. And you wonder, where is the investigation into that? But anyway, let's come back to or onions, or whatever the proper expression in English is. What makes this case somewhat unique is that the UK government is also using the arm of the NCA, that's the National Crime Agency, to threaten criminal proceedings unless we settle. He's been, to be honest, Doug has been rather kind to them in talking about settling, because the recorded phone call that he had with somebody from the DHSC could lead you to believe that there was an attempt to blackmail the couple. But anyway, let's go with settle for the meantime. We have tried to settle on numerous occasions and have been told to increase the figure before they are prepared to, in their words, call the dogs off. Despite the publicity following the recent Laura Kuenssberg BBC interview, neither the Cabinet Office, the DHSC, nor the NCA has sought to deny this. Well, quite frankly, because they know it's true. The stark reality is that DHSC has brought this claim against MedPro at a time of increased scrutiny of how it overspent by so much, and when questions were being asked as to why the government was writing off £9 billion of PPE out of the £13.1 billion spent. How on earth did the government manage to purchase 5 years of PPE? When it was only supposed to build up 4 months of stock? Now that's a very good point there. However, that kind of, that's sort of criticism of the government and really not relevant, I suppose, to this particular case. But nonetheless, I suppose if they're kind of getting the flack for the whole case, then it perhaps is reasonable to address the whole thing. So, Doug says, yet no one has been held accountable at DHSC. Its head, Sir Chris Wormald, Permanent Secretary to the DHSC, should resign, since ultimately he signed off all the PPE contracts. I think he shouldn't be given the opportunity to resign. I think he should be fired, and he should be investigated for financial misconduct, but that's just my opinion. Back to Doug. So rather than focus on the real story here, it suits the agenda of the government and their spin doctors to scapegoat my wife and I for their own lamentable failures. The fact that the COVID inquiry is not scheduled to hear about PPE procurement until 2025 further covers up the situation and kicks the can down the road. Simply unacceptable given that 2024 will be an election year. I understand why the British public feel angry, but their anger should not be directed at Michelle or I. Yes, MedPro made a profit. Nothing wrong with that. As he says here, which was in line with the margins made by other providers of PPE. Yes, Michelle was involved in introducing MedPro to the Cabinet Office. After all, Michelle had 25 years' experience in sourcing and manufacturing of mass-produced goods, and knew firsthand the logistical challenges of sourcing, supplying and delivering large amounts of product at short notice. As you might say, she's not just a pretty face. There are over 1,000 communications with the government to show this, despite the lies of DHSC, that they were not aware of Michelle's involvement. Really? That simply doesn't stack up. Equally, the Cabinet Office knew of my involvement and that we were a married couple. There was full transparency on what goods were being provided, the source of those goods, and the pricing. Michelle and I are being hung out to dry to distract attention from government incompetence in how it handled PPE procurement at a time of national emergency. MedPro supplied the government with 1.5% of PPE spend, or 202 million, against a total of 13.1 billion, and yet the media or the government refuses to focus on the other 98.5% of PPE supplied, much of which was defective or never used and or supplied in identical circumstances to the MedPro contracts. Michelle was neither a shareholder, a director, nor a decision maker in the MedPro consortium that I led. Nor was she entitled to any remuneration. All PPE money earned by me was fully disclosed on my tax return, and, like all my sources of income, was put into trust for the benefit of my family. So far, guys, that's all legal and above board. There's actually nothing to criticise there at all. We have explained the position on the BBC. Sorry to disappoint everyone, but Michelle and her kids were not entitled to any of that money. How I choose to organise my personal affairs is not a matter of public debate, and neither it should be. However, I will say this. As my wife, the ways in which I support Michelle financially or otherwise is entirely my decision. And again, that is, that's his right to make those decisions himself. Finally, Doug says this dispute should be determined in the civil courts. It's not a criminal case, and we certainly should not be judged guilty by the government or its media spin masters before there has been full and fair presentation of the facts. So I think that concludes the statement by Doug, but I'll go back to the tweet just to make sure. Yeah, so I'm going to read out this community notes thing. It says, readers added context. In 2020, when asked about PPE MedPro, lawyers for Moan and Barrowman insisted the couple were not involved and had no role or function in PPE MedPro, nor in the process by which contracts were awarded to PPE MedPro. So, what's not been made clear here that is in this context thing, when it says when asked about, this is not when asked officially, if you like. This is when asked by the media. And as we know, quite frankly, the media are scumbags. And as Michelle has pointed out, it is not an offence to lie to the media. So, no, I don't think that's a very helpful, the way that's been written, I don't think that is helpful. I'm going to say no, it's not. And I'm going to say typos are unclear language. I'm going to say that it is biased. And it's not needed on the post. There we go. Let's have a look and see what The Guardian said about this. Right, now this article is more than a year old, so chances are it's not particularly relevant. I'm just going to scan through it and pick out key points. So the claim in The Guardian is that the partners made as much as 100 million in profits. This bit about the yacht, I've seen that challenged and indeed refuted. First time I've seen mention of a jet and a racehorse. Tory peer excuse me, and husband, now selling yacht and properties. Don't know. Let's get into it. A bit of descriptive stuff there. Basically saying that they supported the NHS. So it's kind of setting the context, and then they're saying 2 years later the NCA were investigating, and the couple's property was one of several places raided due to this NCA inquiry into potential fraud. So lawyers have declined to comment. That's no surprise at all, because the case is ongoing. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said he was absolutely shocked by a bombshell report published in The Guardian 2 weeks ago. Was he? Fuck. He was probably the one that dobbed her in, so to speak, to put the media on her case. And if not him, somebody close to him who was trying to deflect attention away from the government themselves. Quite frankly, there's a lot of accusation here, but there's very little substance to it. And I mean, talking about moving fortunes offshore and stuff, my understanding is that a lot of this PPE was actually manufactured offshore. So it stands to sense that suppliers would need to be paid. This bit here I think is actually quite important, quite relevant. Michelle has taken a leave of absence from the House of Lords in order to clear her name of the allegations that have been unjustly levelled against her. And I think it really has taken a serious toll on her. She, compared to how she describes herself, she does appear to be somebody who has she's lost her mojo to a certain extent, and quite frankly it's sad to see. She would normally have been somebody who was a real go-getter. She talks about living in the moment, and now after all this she can no longer focus on tasks in the here and now. She's constantly anxious about everything that she's been put through, and people raiding her house and poking through her stuff. And quite frankly, whoever that was on the phone from the the DHSC, really should be investigated and prosecuted for blackmail. Anyhow, all in all, as I say, I am convinced that Michelle and Doug have done nothing wrong. They have been subject to the most scrutiny that I can think in the media in quite some time, and yet the media has not come up with any kind of thing that even resembles a smoking gun. And I think the reason being that there isn't one at all. So anyway, with that said, guys, I'm going to leave that story there for now, and I just want to call up another couple of potentially little funnies. Actually, this one doesn't look like a funny, this one looks like a serious story. I'm going to leave that one. Now, this one I thought was good. This is from Charlotte the Baroness. Now, that said, I think this Charlotte actually probably isn't really a Baroness, but anyway, as she says here, bring it on, I say. And as you can see, there's a group of people taking a brush to the door of 2024 to see what hides within, and I'm sure you can understand why they might want to do that. Right, guys, before I leave you this evening, let me just hook out the latest schedule for the channel. I think it's this one. That is the right one. Oh no, it's not. It's not. Hold on a second. What have I done? This is it. Okay. Right, guys, this is the schedule of the broadcasts. As I say, always beginning on Telegram at t.me/cheapskatestreamer. Normally 9:30 in the evening, that's from Sunday, so Sunday 9:30, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, and then I do a 6 AM broadcast on Friday, and that closes out the week. There's no broadcast on Saturday, and I start again at 9:30 on Sunday evening. Other broadcasts and indeed recordings of the broadcasts may be scheduled to run on some of the other mornings that I'm not actually doing a live broadcast, and you can catch those on the various Linktree outlets that are listed on the Linktree page. Guys, with that said, that is going to be it for this evening. Thank you for watching, and as I say, yeah, I'll be back tomorrow evening, 9:30, beginning on Telegram, t.me/cheapskatestreamer. Now, I have recorded this broadcast this evening, and I'll be posting that to the channel straight away afterwards. So, thanks for joining me. Have a great end to your Tuesday, and I'll see you tomorrow evening if you're free. Thanks for watching.